Well, hello and welcome to a brand new episode of The Terri Cole Show. If you don't know me, my name is Terri Cole. I'm a licensed psychotherapist, a relationship expert, and the author of Boundary Boss. My book just came out on April 20th. You can order it anywhere fine books are sold. And if you want to get some bonuses, go to boundarybossbook.com to put in your little receipt after purchase, and we will give you a plethora of gifts for buying the book. It's so excited. I invite you to join the boundary revolution. Why don't you do it? Moving into today's episode, there is still a lot of confusion about boundaries and about how they impact us personally. So this episode, I'm focusing all about how to raise your self-esteem, your feelings of self-worth by having better boundaries. So I want you to understand the connection between the two, and then I'll give you some ideas. Setting clear boundaries in our relationships. What this does is it lets other people know what is okay with us and what is not okay with us. That's actually what we are doing when we are sharing our preferences, our desires, our limits, and our deal breakers with the people in our lives. Most of us feel like, I've heard from so many of you, that you have a fear of being seen as demanding, you don't want to be labeled difficult or bitchy, or all of the things that we know go along with this. But here's the thing, if you don't tell the people in your life what's okay with you, and it's not even just what's okay, what about sharing what's amazing with you, what your preference is, what lights you up, what makes you feel good, right? The things that you like, the things that you don't like, because why this matters is that your preferences, your desires, your limits, and your deal breakers, those are the things that actually make you uniquely you. So if you are hiding those things, or if you are using the umbrella of, oh, me, I'm easy, it's all good, all the time, what you're really doing is you're not just denying the people in your life, like the relationships, knowing you, you're actually denying the world what is amazing about you. Because if you can't tell the truth about not wanting to go to an outside concert or to eat a particular, kind of food, how are you going to actually show your unique and amazing self to the world? Because we get really good at hiding. And there's this direct connection to asserting yourself in your relationships, in your work relationships, everywhere, and your self-esteem, how you feel about yourself. So let's clear something up. There are many reasons why people have low self-esteem. Listen, we are raised in very, what do we want to say? Human families, right? And some of our experiences in childhood were terrible and were terribly traumatic. So if you were raised in a situation where there was addiction, where there was abuse, if you were in a marginalized group societally, there are so many different circumstances, being bullied at school, right? Those things all can create low self-esteem. At the core of low self-esteem, a lot of times though, is shame, right? It's feeling ashamed of either being different, like if you're other than your community, let's say, you're marginalized in some way. And it's shame that if we don't handle that, that is really devastating to our own life experience and our relationships as well. So we could get into all the reasons why you have low self-esteem, if you feel like you do, or your self-esteem could be better. But I think it would be more valuable if I focus on how I can help you create better boundaries, slowly but surely, and how to identify where you need better boundaries. I think that will be more productive. So that's what I'm going to do. I want you to think about your relationship. So we're going to do like a relationship inventory of the important people in your life. What are your experiences? What are your complaints? We all know that there are things that we don't like in our relationships. The question is, are you sharing those things or are you stuffing those things? And the way you know that, well, listen, you know if you're sharing them or not, but just check in with how you feel. Who do you have resentment for in your life? Who are you angry at? Even if you can't admit it out loud, but let's get really honest in this inventory because it'll be so helpful for you to be able to take the next small step in setting a limit or making a simple request. So once you have your list of people, hit pause, you have your list of people, now you're going to really get into what is the problem? Like, what is it that's not working for you in this relationship? And I will give you a little guide so that you can actually fill this out after, because you might be doing something right now. You might not want to stop and do it right this moment. So once you have that filled in, then we can decide action steps that you might want to take. So first, let's understand why those people. Once you have your list, your inventory, and you look at the top, let's say 4, and it's good if it's in important relationships, right? Because these are the ones we care about more than others, right? High priority relationships. Once you have the idea of what it is it someone who is being inconsiderate, someone who is crossing over some kind of a limit that is within you, but perhaps you haven't shared that limit or that you don't like when they do that. So that's the first step, is we have to put them into 2 categories, which is exactly what I teach you to do in the book. You're going to put them into the first timer category, and people go into that category if you have not, in words, clearly and concisely, made the boundary request or set the limit. Even if you've thought it, or even if you've been like low-key pissed off, but not explicit about why, they're going to go into the first timer category. If you're talking about someone where you have, on more than one occasion, specifically told them, because listen, when we're changing the boundary dance in our relationship, you're definitely going to have to do it more than once. So someone in the beginning of changing an established relationship dance, them not getting it like the first time, we can't chalk that up to that they're a jerk or they don't want to respect your boundary. You have to not be super, super thin-skinned, right? We have to expect that there's going to be some forgetting, some pushback. That is pretty normal. Now, it's normal to happen 1, 2 times, maybe 3 max, depending on the situation. But if you have had, you're having the same problem with someone and you've actually talked about this problem on numerous occasions and they have said that they will change it or they still don't understand why you have a problem with it, that's someone who we'll say is a repeat offender. With a repeat offender, you're going to create, you're still going to decide what action you're going to take. I will suggest that you revisit that boundary conversation, and I'll put all this in your guide. But we have to attach, with the repeat offenders, you have to attach some kind of a consequence. If the behavior is a deal breaker for you, and that's something that you have to determine, you have a right to have your deal breakers. And what I find, what a deal breaker is something that is a non-negotiable for you in a relationship. Meaning either the person, that this must be present in the relationship or this must not be present in the relationship. I had a deal breaker that I myself have addiction issues and I'm always struggling. I'm in recovery, but my deal breaker years ago was literally nobody who has any kind of addiction, even a leaning towards addiction, because there's only enough room in this relationship for one person to struggle with that. So Vic has his own stuff, but it's not that, Some people may say, well, isn't that's like cutting your, when I was still dating, that's going to cut out a lot of people. Are you against people in recovery? Like all of these judgments. Here's the thing. Your deal breaker is your deal breaker. And the truth is, I actually didn't give a shit what people said back then because I knew that to protect my own sobriety, I couldn't be with someone who had that same issue. I couldn't be with someone where there's a possibility that they were going to relapse on whatever the thing is. Like, no, that's not for me. And that is only for me to say. Just like your deal breakers are only for you to say. If someone weighs in, tries to weigh in, this is what you learn, and this is what I teach you in the book, is there's all these with ease and grace, you can set boundaries with people who say, well, I don't think you should do that. You can lovingly say, at this moment, though, I'm actually not asking for input. This is my decision, and I've made it. But I appreciate that you care about me. Like, we don't have to be mean when we set boundaries. We don't have to slam someone into the ground. But we also do not have to let people weigh in on our lives, give us their unasked for advice and criticism all the time. We don't. And when we do listen to people, rather than listening to ourselves, what ends up happening, that is a sign of having relatively low self-esteem, where you're always looking outside of yourself, trusting other people's opinions more than your own, right? That your job is to become an expert on you. This is part of how you will raise your self-esteem, is becoming an expert on you, understanding why you are the way you are in the world, in your life, and doing that with compassion and without judgment. The same way you might find other people fascinating, pour that same attention and love and understanding on yourself, because you are fascinating, because your story is unique, and how you feel and what you think matters. But in order to attract people into your life who really feel that way, you've got to get yourself, or to attract more people into your life who respect you. Because remember, you are always setting the bar. Your relationship with yourself is the most important relationship you will ever have in your entire life. And it's the one that so many people put the least amount of effort and care and understanding and compassion into. So right from the beginning in Boundary Boss book, that's the beginning, is setting up the way that we're going to go through this process of you becoming an expert on yourself and on being able to set boundaries with ease and grace, and when appropriate, love. We do this process through self-knowledge, through self-understanding, through self-exploration. Because when you fall madly and deeply in love with yourself, it shows. When you respect yourself, when you care for yourself, when you think you matter, it shows. And if you have the low opinion of yourself, inevitably you will find others who will agree with that low opinion. And you're better than that. Your worth, if you take these steps and start setting small but important boundaries in your relationships and start working on raising your self-esteem, and I have some other ideas that I'm giving you in the downloadable sheet, you're going to see that your relationships shift. Some relationships really change. Some relationships are not flexible enough to change, and there'll be a bit of conflict in those relationships. And hey, some relationships don't make it. And that has to be okay, because you're making room for healthier, better relationships with more mutual respect. I'm not saying raising your self-esteem means you're going to lose all your friends or your romantic relationship. I am saying, as the way you relate to yourself changes, you're going to see that who you attract into your life, friends, work, all of it, will be elevated. You're moving yourself to a different level by consciously raising your self-esteem, by little setting boundaries in your relationships, especially the important ones. You're going to fill out the thing that I created for you so that you can see, where do you need to put your precious time, and energy? In what relationships? What is the boundary ask? Or what is the limit you'd like to set? Or what is the preference that you have that you haven't shared that you are going to share now? And as we start to do this, small, baby steps, little by little, I'll help you with language. Like it's not going to be as hard as it may sound if you haven't done this before. You're going to see a shift within yourself, because every time you share your preference, even if the other person doesn't go along with what you want, or doesn't care, or can't do the thing you ask, your healing comes from the asking. Your healing comes from being strong enough and thinking enough of yourself that you actually make the request, or set the limit, or say no to the thing you don't want to do. And you can do it. We'll start with low, you have the important people, and then I will also give you an assignment to do this in the very marginalized relationships in your life, like interacting with, if you go out to lunch with the wait staff, or with your mail carrier, or whomever, right? Because those are the places where you can really practice this more easily and readily, because they're not relationships that would be devastating in your life if there is to be a conflict, right? So ask for what you want at the restaurant. Send the thing back if it comes and it is not the way that you ordered it. Send it back nicely, with humor, with kindness. There's all these ways to do it. But I feel like those myths around, if you have good boundaries, you have to be mean. Now, this is a boundary revolution right now, right? As of April 20th, when my book dropped, that is the beginning. And I want you to help me amplify this. Let's raise up this ability to talk true, be seen, and finally live free with healthy boundaries by doing the work. If you haven't ordered the book, do it. I promise you, it's worth the money. I promise you. Many people went to their libraries and asked their libraries to carry the book. So you can ask your library. If you don't have the money to purchase it, go to your library. And if that is your situation, you can send a note to support@terricole.com. And if you take it out from your library, I will give you all of the bonuses as if you purchased it, if you are in a financial situation where you can't purchase it. I just want you to have the information. I spent 2.5 decades of my life, basically, collecting this data for you to make it accessible. So I just want it to be accessible. However, we can do it. So I want to hear what you have to say about this. Do you understand the connection between boundaries, good boundaries, and your self-esteem? I want to hear if you try these things that I give you in the downloadable guide, what happens. If you like this episode, share it. I love to repost your stuff in my stories. I'm mostly on Instagram at Terri Cole. Hey, and if you like the show, why don't you give it a good review on iTunes? Why don't you go to, leave me comments on YouTube. Let me know. Let me know that you like it. Share it with the people in your life. And also let me know other things that you would like me to cover, because you're it for me. People, you are it. So I want to say thank you for spending time with me today. Go to boundarybossbook.com right now. You're going to love it. To be continued, and as always, take care of you.